Welcome back to another Director's Cut. This one is a very special one because we're talking about, one of the most polarizing, iconic, visual directors and filmmakers of our time, and that is Mr. Tim Burton. And I can't do this alone. I have, coming in from New York, my good friend, kind of promoted to series regular at this point, Mr. Jay Manning from Classic Flix. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
And not a promotion that you really asked for.
I'm happy to take the pay increase.
Yeah, from nothing to nil, right?
Yeah. Excuse me while I take a whopping bite of my cheeseburger.
Absolutely, that is the type of high class criticism you get on this show, right? But we started this show from Ryan Coogler to Steven Spielberg. Had a great show about Paul Verhoeven. That was a blast. You had yourself, Mr. Tony Walters, who is on assignment right now, who is not joining us this week because he's trying to finish a movie. So that seems interesting.
Yeah, good for him. I wish I was finishing a movie.
Yeah, he's working there, putting the final touches or final principal photography on Dolly Deadly 2, so that's going to be awesome. Can't wait to see that. And then I think that was the first film that him and his camp did that has Trauma backing, so that is a huge deal. So can't wait to see that.
Good for you, Big T. Nicely done.
Right?
Trauma's cool.
Yeah, Troma's awesome. And then we had the illustrious Cecil Trachtenberg on our show last week. But we're looking forward to Tim Burton, and this was one where I was kind of racking my brain. Kind of Jay and I were going back and forth, and then you said Tim. Oh yeah, it's like that. That's one of the most influential filmmakers, especially in my childhood. I was right at that age, born in the early 80s, to really grow up and see this guy in his career. And funny story, right when Nightmare Before Christmas came out, I actually got to meet him. We were in Burton Bragg, but we were in Los Angeles, and he was at like a Tower Records or whatever, if you remember those existed, record stores, right? And it was I drew a little picture of Lock, Stock, and Barrel, and I handed it to him, and that was fun. And I was looking at him, and he's only 59 years old, so it's not even like he's like a super old guy. He's still got some time left on there.
Oh yeah, he got him going at a young age. Was Pee-wee Herman, Pee-wee's Big Adventure came out in like what, 85 or something like that? That was a while ago. And yeah, and you're right, he's polarizing, and you compare sections of his work. I go by decades. In the 80s and 90s, he kind of was at the top of his game. He had a big name. Everything that came out under him was like, oh yeah, another Tim Burton movie. And now we're getting into 2018. It's like, oh really, another Tim Burton movie? Okay. We're gonna Alice in Wonderland again. All right. I have not seen every single movie of his, but I've seen just about all of them. I did not finish Big Eyes. That's the only one I haven't seen all of.
Okay, and I just watched Big Eyes, so we won't get into spoilers really with that one. But this is going to be kind of a spoiler laced review of the entire. This is kind of a undertaking because we're going to go through kind of his whole filmography and just kind of touch on certain ones. We're not going to spend an hour on Mars Attacks, but we'll kind of jump through. We'll do the motions, so to speak, and we'll kind of discuss everything. So, I mean, he started out as an animator. I think his first work really in the industry, he was an animator on the Lord of the Rings animated movie. He did puppet work on the Muppets movie, which is cool. So he started out not just this big filmmaker. He was kind of a working man in the business.
Yeah, I didn't know that about the Muppet movie. That's cool. I knew about the other stuff there. He's definitely a guy who built his craft over a long period of time, and he's probably one of those directors that sets a tone in his movie, even in the ones that aren't entirely successful, of setting a tone and making sure you understand this is what this movie is going to feel like. And he's always got that going all the way back to his short film, what was it, Vincent, from way back when. The tone of that short movie was wonderful, and he carried that through all of his career, really.
And usually almost to a fault, you never have to guess if you're watching a Tim Burton movie. You pop on anything, and you immediately immediately know, because his style just oozes out. You know he's such a stylistic, and he has a signature style to his filmmaking, and almost to a fault where it's just where sometimes it kind of doesn't fit so much. But well, let's kind of jump into the first film that he did, like you mentioned, and it's a film that I love, but I haven't seen it in so long, so I'm going to kind of defer to you about Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
I love Pee-wee's Big Adventure. I saw it when I was a kid, and it came on HBO. It was like when my parents first got HBO, and Pee-wee's Big Adventure was on it. And it's such an innocent tale. He just wants his bike back. He just wants to get from point A to point B, get his bike back, and go on about his Pee-wee life of living in his kooky house and playing with those weird toys. All those toys and stuff you see in the movie all belong to either Paul Rubens or Tim Burton. I saw that on the commentary. Like, he's playing with the dinosaur and the gun. Like, that's all their stuff. They just brought it in from home. It's such a modest little movie. It doesn't have really much flash to it. You just kind of follow Pee-wee. And like, you see him, there's a scene where he's driving in the car with the escaped convict. And I don't know if it's on the Blu-ray edition, but when I watched it as a kid, like, the budget was so low, you could see the signs on the track as they were going past the car, if you look. But I don't know if they've reframed the movie in the Blu-ray or not. But those kinds of mistakes, you're all just like, aw, how adorable. They tried to make us think it really in a car. How dare they? But you forgive it because Pee-wee is just so lovable. That's the first I ever saw of him, before Pee-wee's Playhouse or anything like that came out. And certainly before any controversy around Pee-wee Herman came out. It was just this weird guy who wore a weird little tuxedo in this weird little movie. And it just goes from adventure to adventure to adventure. And then at the end of the movie, they're like, we're going to make a movie out of your adventure. And he's like, okay. I love that movie.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. And like you, that was my first introduction. I think it was my first introduction to Pee-wee Herman in general. I'd have to defer to my older sister on that, because she was a huge Pee-wee Herman fan. But it was probably, thinking back on it, and Tim Burton, someone that is such a, he has his stable of collaborators. We've talked about this on the show. Steven Spielberg has his, not so much, but Tim Burton definitely has his. When you're talking musical scores, almost 80% of his films are scored by Oingo Boingo's, Danny Elfman. And then we have, Johnny Depp and Helena Bonham Carter are all frequent collaborators with him. But Pee-wee's Big Adventure was probably the least Tim Burton stylistic movie. It was very much a Pee-wee Herman movie. It did have that great score, and it had some frightening elements in it as well.
Oh yeah. Movie is scary as hell. Like, the Large Marge, every dream sequence is terrifying. When the devil shows up, Francis is dressed as the devil and puts his bike in the cauldron. Burton has always succeeded at very strong imagery. And so when you're doing a kids movie like this, our childhood dreams, our childhood nightmares rather, kind of look like that, where it's just this obtuse kind of world. And Burton really knew how to maximize his effect on that, where it's just black in the background and you just got these weird characters up front. Yeah, he knew how to make that nightmare fuel imagery before most did.
Yeah, absolutely. And he carried that over to his next film, which is a film that I think you aren't as big on as everyone else. And I did a poll on Twitter in preparation for the show. I just kind of want to get a litmus test on what everyone's favorite Tim Burton movie is. It was kind of a broad question, and you can only throw a couple questions on the voting process on Twitter. So, I basically, off the top of my head, thought of ones that would get a lot of hits, and Beetlejuice, which was his next film, ran away with it pretty much. It wasn't even close. And for me, Beetlejuice, it came out again when I was a tender young lad, and it just did talk about nightmare fuel. It had that dream-like feel to it. Gina Davis, Alec Baldwin, I mean, everyone, Winona Ryder. The cast was just absolutely amazing. It was like almost watching a heightened high school play with a budget. And of course, the great Michael Keaton in this role. It was such an iconic role. I absolutely loved Beetlejuice, but you're not so high on it as I am.
To clarify, I think everything in Beetlejuice succeeds except Beetlejuice himself. I find him so abrasive and annoying and loud and obnoxious. Everything he says and does, just me. I'm just like, oh God, just shut the fuck up. And I think everything else succeeds. Alec Baldwin, in a really forgotten role of his, as of late, he's known for the 30 Rock and now Trump, but that was one of Alec Baldwin's first like lead roles in a movie, and was it Gina Davis with him? The whole cast was wonderful. Catherine O'Hara during
she's so good.
during the dinner scene, she rocks it. She's funny in everything. I don't know if you've ever seen Schitt's Creek, but she's amazing in it. Who else did he? It's like this was like the first Tim Burton movie where like the Tim Burton lineup was in, like Jeffrey Jones was in it. But again, like everything succeeds. The art direction is superb. The music is probably one of the best of any Tim Burton movie. It's an iconic theme. The cinematography, the Dutch angles, Burton pretty much brought those into his fold early on. But the only thing that holds the movie back from being a total success for me is the character of Beetlejuice. Not Michael Keaton. He did a great job because he's awesome. But every line of dialogue that comes out of Beetlejuice's mouth, I'm like, oh, you annoying little prick. And I guess good directors manipulate us emotionally, and that steered me toward I hate him. I hate Beetlejuice. Why do you people even talk to him? But that's it. That's really the only thing that, and it's not a deal breaker, but if someone's like, do you want to watch Beetlejuice? I'll be like, really? You don't want to watch Ed Wood instead?
But I mean, that's the character, right?
Yeah.
And like you said, Michael Keaton. Yeah, for sure. And it was just, talk about, just oozing with style. This movie was it worked so well because it was so over the top, and it was just, our two main characters are, die in the credits, and we're following these ghosts, and then you have, our POV character as Lydia, this goth girl, that wants to die all the time, but you're watching these things, and on paper you're like, this should be very dark and twisted and kind of depressing, but it's not. It's an absolute roller coaster ride, and the effects, fuck's sake, they hold up.
Oh, the effects are amazing, and there's not a drop of CGI in the whole movie. It's all puppet work, stop motion, and basically just really basic camera tricks from way back in the day, forced perspective, all that stuff. So it's not one of those movies where I'm like, why the hell do you like Beetlejuice? I totally get why people like Beetlejuice. It's not Transformers 5 where I'm like, why the hell do you like this shit? This got the ball rolling for Tim Burton. It was a big hit. People loved it. And then they're like, you know what? Let's hand over a beloved comic series to you next.
And that is next, right? Oh, yeah. Batman 1989, I want to say.
I saw that in the theater.
I did too. I was so young. 1989, I was probably like 6 years old, but it was such a crazy movie. Seeing that on the big screen, a comic book movie that wasn't Superman, that I still remember the entire experience at 6 years old, thinking back to it. Wow. It was so much from Batman. It kicked off the entire superhero genre. Michael Keaton goes from playing Beetlejuice to Batman in a very underrated, I think still to this day, when I think of all the Batmans that have come after, he's still the best Bruce Wayne, but I think he's probably the best Bruce Wayne.
Yeah, Keaton's a very honest actor. He never puts forth a persona. He's not like a movie star like Robert Redford, where it's always Robert Redford. Keaton's a chameleon, and if I was older at the time, I probably would have been scratching my head with everyone else going, Michael Keaton, the guy from Mr. Mom, what are you going to be Batman? And Burton took a huge risk of taking the campy Batman that we all knew from TV reruns, and that was it. That was the only Batman that was in media other than print and radio. And it's like, you know what? I'm gonna goth the shit out of this movie. I'm gonna have the buildings be all weird. All the side characters are gonna be like these little cardboard cutouts. Like I love Jack Nicholson's girlfriend in the movie when she's all scarred up, and he's like, "What do you think of my art?" I'm like, "Oh my god, that's horrifying." I mean, Nicholson chews the scenery with 1,000 teeth. So when you hear Jack Nicholson's going to play the Joker, you're like, yeah, that makes sense. And I think people got a nice run for their money when Keaton turned out to be pretty awesome in the role. And he has a stellar supporting cast around him. Even Billy D. Williams is Harvey Dent. What's his name? Who plays Alfred? I don't remember the actor's name who plays Alfred, but he was a great Alfred.
Yeah,
Uh,
they even kept him through the Schumacher phase.
Yeah, that's it's sad that those are sequels to this movie because of all the characters in it. I'm like, really? Okay. But Batman was the first movie that I saw in the theater that had me thinking days and days later, I have to see this again. I think Terminator 2 was like the next one, but I begged my parents to like, can I go see it again? Can I go see it again? And they're like, no, we'll buy it for you. This is when VHSs were like $30 a piece. It was the first movie I owned like in a proper store-bought case that I didn't tape off of TV, and I treasured it, ran the daylight through and everything, watching it 1,000 times because it is really the most rewatchable, I think, of the original 4 Batman movies from the 80s and 90s, where you're not scratching your head going, so we're going to do it like this, huh? It's especially the chemistry between Keaton and Nicholson is top notch. It's wonderful.
Absolutely. And I think, Heath Ledger's performance kind of has overshadowed in time Jack Nicholson's performance, but I think Jack Nicholson's portrayal of the Joker was, like you said, just spot on. Like, everyone's like, yeah, Jack Nicholson's going to play the Joker. Oh yeah, well, that just makes sense. But he did such an amazing job, and it wasn't so. He definitely hit the level of maniacal, and he hit the Joker notes at times, but most of the time he's just straight talking. He's having conversations and business meetings in rooms. Yes, while he's electrocuting someone to death, and then he gets the laughs off. But that is, and I like to think that maybe Ledger took some notes off that, because Ledger was more of a muted Joker as well, where it wasn't just all over the top. It wasn't a Hamill Joker, even though Mark Hamill's Joker is still my favorite Joker of all time.
Same.
But yeah, it just was not a. It wasn't a huge performance. It was a very subtle Joker performance, but it worked so goddamn well. And just the design of the thing, it was definitely a Tim Burton styled movie, especially with all the henchmen. They're all kind of weird circus people. But even down to the set design, like the Batmobile and the Batcave, were just absolutely fantastic.
Oh yeah, and you're right. As far as Joker performances go, Nicholson's is pretty down to earth. I mean, you look at Cesar Romero, who was just the zany clown in the clown kind of suit. Hamill is all over the place, but it always works. I like every Joker performance except one.
Yeah, I agree.
It's ever been put out there, even some of the other cartoon ones there. Nicholson found his place. I guess it's still his favorite movie that he's ever made, and because he got to have the most fun. And Burton certainly knows how to work with actors. I don't know what his secret trick is, but he always gets the best performances out of his villains.
Yeah. John DiMaggio is another very good Joker. He did one of the animated movies, I think, Under the Red Hood.
Yeah.
Oh God, just so fan. If you want to hear Bender from Futurama do Joker, that movie is brutal. But yeah, and it still had that. It was still very current too, because with the Prince, with the end scene, you get the Prince song, but it had just like the imagination of the ending of that movie, where all these giant, are just filled with noxious gas, and how they pulled it off and not make it look absolutely silly was just pretty like incredible. Did he follow this movie right up with Batman Returns?
No, there was one in between them, and this is another one where I go against the majority of opinions. Edward Scissorhands. I think Edward's a psycho. That's just me. I get it. Is another one where I get it why people like it. My wife loves this movie, but I'm thinking like there are so many scenes that don't work for me. Like when he's at the barbecue and he's stabbing everyone's food. I'm like, asshole, who's gonna eat that? You put your friggin' greasy mitt hands all over it, and when's the last time you cleaned those things? And I started asking too many logical questions, like how come nobody's gone up to this house before? It's right here. But my personal feelings aside, I think it succeeds. He does everything right. He knows how to make suburbia look like a total pastel neutral environment where everyone's got the same kind of house. They're just painted differently. Everyone has the same kind of problems. Although one thing that confused me is if they had never had snow until Edward Scissorhands made snow, why is the dad stapling snow to the roof of the house in the one scene? Where he's like, "Where are you going, Ed?" Snip, snip. I'm like, "You have snow. Why are you doing this if you've never had snow?" And like when the lady wants to have sex with him in the back room, I'm like, he's full of sharp things, right?
Right.
I mean, you might want to put like a friggin' oven mitt or a tea cozy on his hands or something. He's gonna slice a nipple off, lady. That shit's sick. But all kidding aside, it's another one where Burton uses Winona Ryder and gets one of her better performances out of it.
Oh, absolutely. And you do have to suspend disbelief quite a bit because, and I think the whole attraction to, with that lady and everything is because he was so foreign and alien and all it just, when you live in the suburbs and stuff like that, you could see, PTAs and all this stuff. And so anything new that walks in a room, even like when we just moved from Vegas to Seattle, our first day, it got word out that we were like the weird people from Vegas, and everyone was just like cautiously welcoming us because we were like the weird shiny new people. It's like, why would you invade the Pacific Northwest from your hot ass desert? But
the coffee
and the booze, man, because the booze up here is so much better. But I agree. I think this is the first Johnny Depp Burton collaboration, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah. And talk about making an actor. I mean, this was at the time the Robert Pattinson, if you will, Johnny Depp was just the heartthrob, and this kind of pushed it more towards he wasn't just the beat cop from 21 Jump Street, but now he's the heartthrob for the weirdos and all that too. And Winona Ryder, what a stark contrast, right, from Beetlejuice or being Lydia, who looked like Edward Scissorhands in Beetlejuice, right, to now she looks like this perfect statuesque everyday cheerleader blonde girl. Again, what was the name of the mom? But she just
Diane Wiest.
Oh, I love her so much.
She's great in everything she's in. She's just so good, and she's awesome in this too.
She's so good in this film, and I think last performance from Vincent Price, which is just heartbreaking. And it's so weird because a lot of these artists, actors, musical artists, they feel, or I think they know kind of when the the old death is coming around the corner, because his performance, Vincent Price's performance in this, spoiler alert, he dies, and it was just he was like giving his all, and it almost, I was watching Ed Wood the other night, it made me think of Bela Lugosi, and it's just a heartbreaking scene. Edward Scissorhands, it is a little schlocky, but it does have a lot of heart. And again, this is before Burton kind of went more style over substance, where the style worked, and the stark contrast of a Burton world, where Edward Scissorhands was created, to where, the suburbia was a fun thing to play with. So I do love Edward Scissorhands. Again, my sister was obsessed with this movie. It was either watching this or Cry Baby on repeat. And let me tell you, yeah.
Better choice.
Yeah. All right. Where are we going next?
Next is Batman Returns. I saw this in the theater too, and it was one of the first times I was truly disappointed that I thought about it for days, because I don't know, this one sucks. The story is just all over the place. It can't find any focus. The villain, Danny DeVito, he's great. I love Danny DeVito, but 3 minutes after seeing the Penguin, you're like, Batman's gonna kick this guy's ass. He's like that big, and I don't. As such a Batman fan, like, I've read more Batman comics than all other comics put together that I've read in my life. And seeing this kind of Penguin really threw me underneath the radar of it, of like, oh, the Penguin's sophisticated. But now he's like this gross creature from the sewers of Gotham. And I understood what they were going for, but I cannot ever finish this movie when I start it. I'll watch it on mute because Michelle Pfeiffer's in it. Yeah. And, I'm not going to state the obvious. She's wonderful. And it does a great job. Puberty. Yeah, right. But this is just one I'm not a fan of. I like Batman Forever more than this one. Yeah, I know, hurts.
Oh.
But I get why it was such a big hit, and I'm not going to repeat myself too much when people say they like Batman Returns. I'm like, okay, good, great. It's better than Batman and Robin for sure. I'd give this one a C+ over the A I give the first Batman, because I have a really hard time making it through it because the story's just so all over the place. And talk about underusing Christopher Walken.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh no, he should have been like the main guy. But I did like the part where Danny DeVito bit that guy's nose off, though. That was funny.
I mean, just watching a more sloppy Danny DeVito like suck down fish, it didn't do it for you?
Oh, it's sexy as hell, but I didn't think it served the story.
Oh man, I am so on the other end of this, and I'm probably gonna gain your ire for this, but I almost could watch this more than Batman or regular Batman.
Cool, it's been a great chat. I'll see you around.
Oh man, I mean, maybe it was because I was just a little bit older and I could, I already saw the mystique of seeing a comic book movie, especially kind of a dark, gritty one like the original Batman. I just, oh my God, I loved Batman Returns so much. Michelle Pfeiffer, for all the reasons that we just talked about, and she was the one when they were making the movie, they already had Danny DeVito in mind. I mean, that was just, you talked about Jack Nicholson as Joker. I think even before they announced anything and they said that Batman Returns and it might have the Penguin in there, I think everyone already said, well, Danny DeVito's the slam dunk choice. And I think he was great. And yeah, he is this little turd, but he's kind of a little turd in the comics too. He's more of a device man. He's got, the henchman. He's just more of a dirty politician, Oswald Cobblepot. And I think that he did that well. Maybe, you could argue that the Penguin in the comic books is a little more sophisticated or whatever, but he was such, just the costume design on the Penguin, I thought was fantastic. And Michelle Pfeiffer was the one where she went up against like a ton of actresses, like your Bridget Fondas and everybody back in the day, all those 90s kind of vixens. And she won out. And that was not the obvious choice because she was not doing these kind of roles whatsoever. I knew she was kind of a sex symbol, but not as like almost like a sultry kind of slutty sex symbol like she is with Catwoman. And I think she just absolutely killed it.
Every scene between her and Bruce or Catwoman and Batman, I thought were the best parts of the movie. They had remarkable chemistry, especially when they find out who each other is, that one moment where it's like, oh shit. And because Burton has always been good, or at least the writer, I thought, for Batman Returns, I forgot who wrote it exactly. They knew how to go exactly with the audience. We were never a step ahead of anybody. And that was true in the first Batman movie, too. Nothing ever throws you for a loop. Like, like right at the end, when Batman takes his cowl off and he's putting a lot of trust in Selina, even though he's revealing himself in front of the bad guy, which, let's face it, he knows he's going to be dead in a couple of minutes anyway. So, but I love how they wrapped up her character, how she took care of Christopher Walken's character and left it open-ended so she could return. Like I said, it's just one of those movies where I'm like, pick a story and stay with it. People have threads, they have resolution, and you're, it goes A, B, C, D, but you're doing A, B, Q, R. To a friend of mine who breaks down screenplays, that's one of the ones he used to say, this could have been so much better if you'd done things in the proper order. But, it was a huge hit, and America has spoken. The two Tim Burton movies are the best of the original 80s and 90s Batman, and I can't fully disagree.
well, yeah, but I mean, nowadays when they do Batman movie, or in contrast, you had two villains and kind of two storylines. I guess 2.5 villains with Christopher Walken, if you're counting him. But you had that. But nowadays you have Justice League and Infinity War, and it's like now every movie is such a packed can of spam. Where yeah, it's fun and it's entertaining and it's like watching a big spectacle like a sporting event or something like the Super Bowl or whatever, and it's this like eyeball orgy of all your favorite superheroes on the stage at once and all these supervillains on the stage at once, and they make it work. But I thought that this it only had two, and I thought they did it pretty well.
Amen. What's next? Is Nightmare Before Christmas technically his? I know he didn't direct it, but
we have to talk about it. I mean,
I like it. It's adorable. It's just so fun and adorable. and nice and short. It's only like 81 minutes. But the animation is supreme. It's been unmatched. It in the 25 years since the movie came out, you just can't beat that visual. I guess what I'm trying to say is it looks the way I think Tim Burton's actual imagination looks, because they were not bound by actual real-time Earth things like making an actor look a certain way or having a set look a certain way. He could do literally anything they wanted. And every single knob on a door, every like crooked little building and fence, even like the buttons on Sally's dress, they're all appropriate. And every single song, I think, works perfectly.
I could recite the movie completely. I could recite every song. I could sing it. I won't spare you, but that was just. I mean, that movie was everything to me, and it still is. And it's so like, oh yeah, hot topic-y. It's just like I'm cool because I like Nightmare Before Christmas. It's like, no, I don't fucking care. It was such an important film. It took so much time and effort to do, and the characters were amazing. Again, just the voice cast of Catherine O'Hare, Danny Elfman as the singing voice of Jack, and Chris Sarandon as the speaking voice. It's just like it was mind-blowing how incredible everything came together, this perfect storm of everything. He didn't direct it, but it might have been almost better for it because he was so involved. Because a movie down the line in Corpse Bride, he did direct, and I didn't like as much, and it is a little bit more forgettable. So it was kind of nice to have maybe an outside view of someone. I mean, because that's basically his masterpiece, and you and I both agree. I think that we think that Ed Wood is kind of his masterpiece, but this was literally. The production was an absolute masterpiece. My kids, all ages of my children, I got a million of them. They all could still watch Night Before Christmas to this day and be entertained. It's a generational film. Yeah, there's really nothing else I could say. I could gush for hours about Night Before Christmas.
I could too. I'll just touch on one thing about Jack. He realizes that he's the villain at the end.
Yeah,
he's the one who realized that. Wait, I have totally screwed up. I've crossed wires and have crossed the streams that should not have been crossed. I have to untie this bow. I think it's a little odd that he's trying to bring Christmas to Halloween Town, or Halloween to Christmas Town. I can understand him bringing Christmas to Halloween Town because it'll brighten the place up. But I want to know when he walked into Christmas Town and be like, you know what you guys could use? Some severed heads. Now I'm going to put some dismembered bodies over here. So I always found that odd. I think that's what keeps me from thinking the movie is totally perfect, but it's a gem, and it's nice to think of it as being timeless because so many movies from that era date so badly, especially in the 80s and early 90s. This is one that's completely devoid of any kind of nostalgia or any kind of period look. It ages very, very well. It's probably one of the better aged movies that we got going.
Absolutely, and you could see seams and strings and all that, but it just doesn't even matter. It's just like visually, it's so stunning, and so you could forgive every little thing on there because everything took so much time, effort, and love, and you could definitely see it. So segueing into
Ed Wood, 1994.
Oh, okay.
This
Never
is the
saw
one that. This is the one that got Burton some serious attention, and people thought, oh wow, he's actually really kind of an auteur filmmaker. He not only has a signature style, he knows how to tell a great story with real people. And Ed Wood succeeds on every single level because you really just root for Ed. I mean, I'm going to make this piece of shit movie and it's going to be great. Like, yeah, it is going to be a really good piece of shit movie. Oh, by the way, I'm a transvestite. What? And I love how they tackle that subject. I love how they make it appropriate to the period that he's living in. I love all the reactions from people when he tells his girlfriend, "You're wondering why your sweaters are always stretched out." I mean, every single performance, especially in not forgetting Martin Landau, who I thought gave one of his best performances ever, playing junkie Bela Lugosi, just completely devoid of any of the cool movie star look that he always had. He's like, no, I'm a junkie. I want to die. What are you talking about? I'm not going to be in a movie. And he's like, oh, come on, you'll be great. And everyone falls for Ed's contagious enthusiasm. It's a brilliant movie, and in black and white. Talk about a risk from Burton's part.
Yeah, I mean, inspiring is like selling it short, but it really really is. It's so hard. Like Depp's performance in Ed Wood is so infectious, and it just makes you so optimistic about everything. And it's so funny because the entire time he's just like, nope, the sleazy producer side. He's like, well, my next one will be better, like. He's just so like he could put the silver lining on a big just jumble of shit, and he knows he's making shit. The Baptist people are just like, well, we just saw the carpet come up and the headstone fall over. He's just like, no one cares about that. It's the big picture, It's
he walked into the doorway and the set moved. It's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, he's gonna go through that in his normal life. And I mean, from top to bottom, not just Depp's performance, but everyone's performance, even Sarah Jessica Parker, and kudos for her for saying, confirming I have the face of a horse. It's just like that I think spawned the whole Sarah Jessica Parker as a horse face.
Well, if she can own it, she can own it, I guess. So
Bill Murray, what is his name?
Murray. Jeffrey Jones.
Yeah.
I love Bill Murray's part when he's in the pool and they're like, do you reject Satan and all his evil? Yeah, sure. Whatever. He's so nonplussed about it. Like, can we just get this over with?
Yeah. And he literally
knows.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, just gonna say, Burton knows how to pepper the supporting characters with faces you will remember. He knows how to pick really distinguished faces. We were saying about Verhoeven how he likes exaggerated features. Burton definitely likes the classic movie star, classic monster movie look. Who was it? Vincent Price, who was an alum of those films. You can tell he loves that genre and loves Ed Wood. And this is one of those few biopics where it doesn't follow that formula. Where like, I'm a little boy, I want to make movies. I met this girl. I mean, this just plops you right in. He's like, I'm just going to make this movie, and it opens just like one of those B Hollywood movies would, with the titles and everything, and they're very plain. This movie looks like it could have been made in the 50s.
Absolutely, yeah. Landau's performance as Bela, they could have done. This movie could have gone in so many different directions, but it was a hyper stylized version of the truth, and I think that was great because it was the perfect. It didn't go too far into satire because it still had this giant heart, and it kind of ran like a perfect parallel of tone, and it was very funny, but it was also heartbreaking at the same time. But it wasn't heartbreaking in the way where it's hitting you over the face. You have Bela Lugosi's at the end of his rope, and you could see like very graphically the tracks on his arms and all this. But it wasn't about that. It was about this friendship, and not Ed Wood fixing him or anything like that, or bringing him out of that. It was just about a friend meeting another friend and being there for them towards the end of their life. And it was just such a beautiful movie. And Sarah Jessica Parker's lines are just so funny. Like finally melts down and just like, your movies are terrible. Everything you hear is shit, and everyone's just kind of standing around.
I love that she's the realist of the bunch because she has to be. She's supporting him, and she gets hit with this bombshell news that he loves to wear women's clothes, but I'm just the same person. I just feel more comfortable. I love that it took that issue and brought that into the real world. Too often in movies before this and after a little bit, you get that kind of storytelling as an issue of the film. It's more of a quirk of his personality. It's more just another undercutting of his character. It's just another layer. It's not the focus of the movie. It's like if we made a J. Edgar Hoover movie, and he just wore women's dresses and the whole thing, that's not a complete character. But in Ed Wood, we get that probably because Burton directs Depp so well. I mean, it's obvious they've worked together for so long, and because Johnny Depp always does his homework. He does so much research, and he dove into Ed Wood's life and just recreated him, kind of like when he played Hunter S. Thompson. He was extreme, but he wasn't dishonest with the character at all.
Yeah, and I think later on, and this is kind of a topic for another discussion, but I think later on, Depp just kind of, his performances kind of melt together, and he's kind of doing the same character now in everything. But this was when he, like you said, he would completely dive into that particular role, that particular person, and give a huge authentic performance, kind of like a Leonardo DiCaprio or something like that. But he What was I gonna say? Yeah, it's just it's such an uplifting movie. Even when the roll credits and you see what everyone's up to now, it's like Sarah Jessica Parker's character in real life. She went on to have the most success, and it's like probably because she got away from these people. She wound up writing, being a songwriter for Elvis Presley and all this stuff, and then it's showing Ed in his big moment. For the movie premiere, and then slightly after that, it has this big Hollywood ending, right? We're gonna go get married in Vegas and all this stuff, and then it's just like Ed Wood, died penniless, and he always struggled. It's just like, oh, okay, yeah, that's nice.
Bet he had some nice shoes to wear though.
He did, absolutely. All right. Talk about casting too. That the giant man, he looks exact. I forgot his name now. The Do My Toes. He looks so much like the original person that it was crazy that they could rip someone out of the 1990s that looked exactly like a giant, Swedish wrestler from the 1950s.
And just another testament to how authentic Burton used to want to be in making his period movies. Oh, you know what's next?
Used to want to. Uh-oh.
You know what? Mars Attacks is next.
And that's the review.
Yeah, right. I wish this movie didn't fail as much as it did. I want to like it. Every time I try to sit through it, I want to like it so much because the aliens are awesome. And every time they're on screen, the movie's twice as interesting. When they're off screen, I'm always saying, go back to the aliens. Stop letting Jack Nicholson play 7 different parts and go back to the aliens. Because there really is no character to really get behind. And that's a shame because Burton peppers it with so many great actors. I mean, Michael J. Fox in the movie, Pierce Brosnan. There's like 25 people and too many characters in this, and it just kind of all goes to shit. And I wish it didn't because I love those B movies like Earth versus Flying Saucers and This Island Earth. He's just putting them all in. It basically he did the opposite of what Dark City does, where he put so many ingredients in the pot. It didn't make something perfect. It made this big fucking mess. I love the aliens. I love some of the comedy. I love the general's reaction when he starts melting and when they first arrive. That's straight out of The Day the Earth Stood Still. It's a real shame this movie sucks as much as it does.
And I think this might have been the first jump into like Burton's like CGI, right? Because the aliens, I think they were CGI.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, and it does not hold up. I was kind of looking through. I didn't really sit down and watch the whole thing again, but I was kind of like flipping through it, and I'm like, wow, this doesn't look as good as I thought. This was probably the first time where I was just like, okay, I'm gonna give you a pass because I know you're Tim Burton, you're the greatest thing ever. Especially being the age I was, but I was just like, okay, I could see kind of some cracks in the armor here. This was the first kind of style over substance. He got way too cute with this movie. And I remember seeing it in the theater, and I was just like, oh my God, this is pretty brutal. Like everyone is dying, but you're right. Everyone is an asshole. Everyone is a complete and utter asshole, and you're rooting for the aliens
every time. Every time you're ready for them to be a hero. Like the kid at the end with his grandma is kind of a hero, but he's so few and far between in the movie. You're just like, nah, I don't care. I don't care about your grandma either. And what is it? Tom Jones music is the thing that makes their heads explode, which is fun to watch. But it's kind of that Independence Day ending before Independence Day endings were a thing where you're doing the old finger in the barrel of the gun trope. As Stewie Griffin would say, that's a real shame. That's a real shame.
Yeah. When you said, I think you told me in a message where you're just like, Mars Attacks, one of your least favorite. And I was thinking about like, oh, you're crazy. And then like I said, I started researching. I'm like, oh yeah, it does kind of suck. So I'll have to agree with you on this. I loved it at the time, but does not anything about it doesn't hold up. The story, the characters, it was just kind of a hodgepodge of garbage. And this was kind of the start of a decline. He did have some hills after this. It wasn't all valleys, but what do we got next?
Sleepy Hollow.
Talk about a hill.
Yeah, this movie's awesome. Everything about it works. The setting and the costumes are probably the best I've seen in any Tim Burton movie. Every single costume is just fantastic. The music. If you watch the opening credits, this is how Danny Elfman works, right? You watch the opening credits, and Danny Elfman's name comes up. Music by Danny Elfman. It swells into
Yeah.
this thing like, yeah, I'm Danny Elfman. I wrote the movie. The movie's twice as good as it should be because of me.
He's a
I love,
character.
yeah, in the way they change it from the story. The original story is only like 65 pages, and the way they change Ichabod Crane works totally. I love that he's a total foppish loser cop. Who they're like, go to Sleepy Hollow, solve these murders, get the hell out of here. He's like, very well, I will take my gizmos and my science, and he gets up there, and the first thing he does is faints. You know?
It was such a brutal movie too. I mean, coming off Mars Attacks, where it was cartoonish, where it was that heightened sci-fi kind of cartoony way that people were dropping dead and getting flamethrowered and everything. This was like super brutal. All the grotesque makeup was spot on. Where he's inspecting the headless woman, and you see all the councilmen just one after another just die in this crazy brutal way. But it was almost sold as like a family movie. It's like, yeah, come see Sleepy Hollow. It's about Ichabod Crane
movie where people are decapitated, and it's nothing like the book. This is one of those few examples where I think the movie is much better than the book. The book isn't really that great a read if you want to get down to it. It's so short, and the story is just not anything remotely like this. I love that they didn't piss around with this. It's magic. It's an undead guy coming back, and when Johnny Depp, when Ichabod Crane realizes that he turns into a little kid, it's a headless horseman. He's like, yeah, we tried to tell you. He's like, no, it's a headless horseman, and then he faints again. And going back to dream sequences, Burton nails it again here. There's like 3 dream sequences, which I usually hate in a movie. I think they're bad, sloppy writing. Not in this. Every single one of them is informative. Every single one reveals Ichabod's characters and his fears and foibles, and it's not just, oh, I'm going to dream about something random. No, he dreams about his free spirit mom, his puritanical dad, and why he's afraid of everything.
Yeah. Oh my God. And of course, once again, the great Christopher Walken. He's in it for a grand total of maybe 2 minutes and just completely steals the show. I love the his headless horseman with the teeth and everything. It's such a he just seemed like such an unstoppable force throughout the entire movie. It just seems like no matter what they were doing, he was like the Terminator. They made the headless horseman like the Terminator, and it was just such a fun, brutal movie. Another one where like I said, my family's just like, let's all go see the new Tim Burton movie. We're such Tim Burton family, and then it was just like, oh my God, like fucking nightmare fuel. We see the mom die in an Iron Maiden.
Oh yeah, and I love that the Headless Horseman is such a formidable character that it takes 2 actors to play him. It's Ray Park for all the stunt stuff, and Christopher Walken, who ironically is terrified of horses and is never seen on an actual horse in this movie.
Sure,
because he wouldn't go near him. He's like, no, I won't go near the horse. It'll hurt if he steps on me. I won't be able to dance. So they put him on a fake looking, horse. Christina Ricci, this is one of her better roles where
absolutely.
she's not, she's kind of understated, even though she's playing like this witch type person. She's the realist again. He knows how to make these women characters in his movies be the ones who say, guys, let's not get carried away. This has a reason for happening. And once she realizes that her dad was basically the bad guy of the town, and she just kind of cuts ties. And I love the way the movie ends, where they basically adopt the kid and go to New York. And it's just and it's really fun too. Even as dreary as it is, as dark and as violent as it is, it's a really good time. And Miranda Richardson is great in it too. Who played her husband? Dumbledore.
Oh
Dumbledore
yeah,
played her. Michael Gambon played her husband. He was wonderful, and it's filled with Harry Potter and Star Wars people. Just
it really is.
Park, the Emperor's in it.
The shithead uncle from Harry Potter, right?
Yeah, yep. Dumbledore, Uncle Vernon, a couple others. Another great cast. Casper Van Dien from Starship Troopers plays basically the town bully. But I love that they kind of humanized him too. He wasn't just this boorish dick. He actually did care about Katrina. It made an impact when he got sawed in half, which was pretty awesome. But I would give Sleepy Hollow an A, man. That's just a great movie, and I wish they'd do it justice for a Blu-ray release for its 20th anniversary, which is right now.
Are you kidding me? That's not on Blu-ray yet?
Well, the Blu-ray it's on sucks. It's just
Okay.
one of those direct transfers, which they didn't take any time to it. It was like the first Total Recall Blu-ray I got, where I was like, nope, thanks. And then they re-released it properly.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Like you said, I'd probably give it an A minus. It's such a fun thrill ride. Moving on to
Shit, Planet of the Apes.
oh
Yeah.
God. Yeah, this I think was the first Helena Bonham Carter collab, maybe, right? Or was she in Sleepy Hollow? I don't think she was in Sleepy Hollow.
No, she wasn't.
Yeah, this might have been it. This was, I think, maybe right after Fight Club came out. So, I mean, you can't really tell that it's her. This movie, I liked Michael Clark Duncan. I thought he was great. I thought Tim Roth was fantastic. The costume design was okay. Man, am I glad they threw this to the movies we get now, though.
I'm sorry, I cannot stand Mark Wahlberg. He is so unconvincing to me in everything. He's just another douchebag from Boston. I'm sorry, Mark, if you ever see this, but I don't get it. He got nominated for an Oscar for playing a douchebag from Boston.
Yeah.
But and
I do like Rockstar.
This movie. Oh, I hadn't seen Rockstar, so I can't comment. I did like him in Boogie Nights, but man, talk about taking a good idea like Planet of the Apes and just pooping all over it. It's the opposite effect of what happened with Batman, because the Planet of the Apes movies are all cheesy and corny and very brightly colored, and they have a lot of social satire going on in them. And then he darkened this to where, like, when you watch this movie, I got to turn the brightness up on the TV. I can't see a goddamn thing. And the music is abrasive, and it just doesn't end. And when it does end, you're like, really?
Dun dun dun. It was like watching a real Ed Wood movie.
Right. And I guess I can't say any more than that. This movie just sucks ass.
It does. This is probably the first. Man, I would give this a solid D minus F. I mean, it's that trash. It sucks. Like, echoing everything you said, everything about it is terrible. The only thing that maybe saves a little bit, like I said, Tim Roth has done some stinkers, and he always elevates those stinkers. So, I mean, just solely on Tim Roth being cool, and to be completely 100% honest with you, I even forgot that Mark Wahlberg was in this until you said it. I'm like, Mark Wahlberg was in this, and he's the
hi, you're an ape, huh? Hi, you're an ape. Oh, that's really great. Say hi to your mother for me.
Yeah, terrible. Let's move on,
please. I lost the page. Big Fish.
Oh, okay.
You go. I'll back you up.
Okay. This movie is the heartstrings. This is the feels, and I mean, I can't believe this followed up that trash fire. Big Fish is just a story. It's like a storytelling book, or a storybook. But just real life. I can't watch Big Fish without getting a little glassy eyed. I can't talk about Big Fish without almost getting glassy eyed. It's just, if you have any kind of dad stuff or anything, it hits you there. It's also that optimism that it just, like an Ed Wood, where just Ewan McGregor's character is just this optimist, and it's just such a fantastically made restraint movie, even though it is fantastical at times. And again, where it was overly stylistic, where it had just so much substance, and it did still have, the freak show scene, and it had these exaggerated moments, but it was just such a larger than life movie, but toned down to just being someone telling you a story. I could go on. I have to watch Big Fish like once every year at least. I should probably watch it more, just because this is one of my, probably in my top 10 favorite movies of all time ever made.
I haven't seen it in a while, but I've always appreciated it for how it's a great example of how you can use fantastic stories and the fantastic elements it has to show, mainly Ewan McGregor's character, how our parents will fail us. They will, even if you have the best relationship with your parents ever, they will fail you in some way. And I wish I'd seen it fairly recently, but I do appreciate McGregor's journey through it, of how he wants to live in the real world more. And by the end of it, he can. There was one specific scene. I'll just fuck it up if I try to bring it up, so I won't even bother, because it's been like a decade since I've seen Big Fish. But I remember it making that impact of like, oh, Burton can do more than just give you a bunch of insane eye candy. Even if every scene doesn't land, I don't think every part of it lands. But it has everything that you want a Tim Burton movie to have. It has all the heart in the world. Your characters are pretty much well defined, the ones you care about, at least. And Danny DeVito gives another great performance, and it as short as his screen time is. But I think it's one of McGregor's more honest portrayals. He's always managed to stay under the radar and stay out of, with the exception of Star Wars, stay out of franchise land and play his Ewan McGregor persona. And I don't even know what that is. He's such a good actor, especially you take when this come out, like 2001 or something like that. Around that, he'd only done like Train Spotting and Star Wars, and that was pretty much all I'd seen him in up until then. I think maybe in The Men Who Stare at Goats, he played a similar character, but I did appreciate his performance more than all the rest.
Yeah, and this movie just came out of nowhere too, and it's just, Ed Wood, I think, is a more important movie, and a dessert, like, just for strictly for performances and everything. Like, you could show Ed Wood at a film school and have people learn from it. Where Big Fish is just, to me, it's more of a personal movie. So I tend to like I think Big Fish might be my favorite Tim Burton movie ever made, because it just, I don't know, it just hits me on the palate perfectly. It just hits all those tasting notes. But like I said, Ed Wood is a masterpiece. I don't think Big Fish is, but I think it is just a beautiful, beautiful movie. And it's a good, watch it with your, like you said, it's your it teaches you that your parents will fail you, and it almost gives you, even though it's such an uplifting movie, but it's just like, oh my God, it makes me want to go outside and throw a ball around with my son. Because nothing lasts forever, right? So yeah, let's move on before John needs therapy.
What is next? Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Screw that movie. Moving on.
Boo, next.
Boo, next. No, seriously, it
Fuck
sucks.
That movie.
How do you dare you follow Gene Wilder? Which is arguably the most pitch perfect performance in all of cinema, up there with like Norman Bates and Hannibal Lecter. It just, oh God damn it, why?
Yeah, it's such.
Why?
Yeah, I mean, the scene that sticks out to me is when the kids finally go there and everything catches fire. I'm like, yeah, that's basically the movie. Fucking Tim Burton just set a masterpiece on fire. Fuck that movie. I try to erase it from my memory.
Next, Corpse Bride.
Yeah, like I said, kind of forgettable, but
it's all right. And it felt like a lot of people phoning it in. It's basically the one that's not Nightmare Before Christmas. Do they have songs in it? Did they sing? I don't know if they did or not. I cannot remember a friggin' thing about this movie, other than the fact that I watched it and said, this isn't nearly as good as Nightmare Before Christmas. What is this about? Why are you glorifying this type of relationship? Okay, yeah. Tim. Is everything okay at home, Tim?
It's not a bad movie by any means, but I think, the perfect follow-up to Night Before Christmas, I think, was James the Giant Peach. I think Coraline was a lot better film than this. But for the most part, it was just, it was forgettable. I watched this a couple times because I'm just like, oh, it's the next whatever, and it really isn't. I think I tried to make this movie better and more important in my mind than it deserved.
Yeah, its biggest flaw is that it is so painfully average in the grand scope of Burton's body of work. It's not going to be on anyone's best or worst list, I don't think. If it is, I guess good for you, but it's just so forgettable for me that, like, no, moving on.
And real quick, do you think this was kind of like we said before, with maybe Burton shouldn't have directed something like this, where you put someone else in the chair for Night Before Christmas, you saw what you get, but then you give him the complete keys of the kingdom, and that's why it was so blah?
I think with any director who establishes a brand like Scorsese or Spielberg, you end up either consciously or subconsciously surrounding yourself with people who will just agree with you because you are who you are. Art thrives on restriction. And if you go back to Pee-wee's Big Adventure, made for $38, the characters in that are just richer than anything you're going to find in Corpse Bride, because people were telling him no back in 1985. Just like George Lucas, the original Star Wars came out as good as it did because it had so many restrictions against it, and the prequel sucked so bad because he was surrounded with yes men.
Yeah.
And I think that's what happens with Burton. And I don't think it's anything anyone did on purpose or in a conscious kind of way where, they're like, oh, I'll never disagree with Tim Burton. I'm sure he gets people disagreeing with him. But, when you become more of a brand than just a director, kind of what you say goes, and creative challenging maybe falls by the wayside a little bit. And I think that's what happened in the last 10 or so years of Tim Burton movies. I think he just kind of makes what he wants for himself. I could be completely off about this. But based on from 2004 forward, going from Corpse Bride into Sweeney Todd now, I think that's another example of something that was already done really well, that Burton had to Burtonize. As much as I don't like musicals, this one was especially distasteful for me. And like, okay, there's so much fucking blood in this now that these happy songs-ish are just, I don't know. Do you like Sweeney Todd? Because
I've never seen it. That was one of the ones. Yeah,
it's another just average kind of movie that looks beautiful and sounds beautiful. But I'm in theater, so I should like musicals more than most people, but I don't. So every time a song would come on, I'm like, oh shit, I'm back in 11th grade again, and people around me won't stop singing this crap.
We're watching Fiddler on the Roof with blood.
Oh, for Christ's sake. I give it a C. Like, it's not unwatchable. It's not a piece of crap or anything. It's just kind of average. And following that is Alice in Wonderland.
Live my life without ever seeing that?
Absolutely. You could live my life without ever seeing it again.
And segueing in, I could live my life without wishing I never Wonderland.
Oh boy. And this is where he got, Alice in Wonderland is where he got totally into CGI land and just abandoned his realism altogether. Part of what I love about early Burton work is the sets and production, and the fact that, okay, someone made that crooked building to do that. And Alice in Wonderland, well, it's still, they were pretty faithful to the story overall. But and the girl who played Alice was very good. She has a wonderful screen presence. To see Helena Bonham Carter's giant head on some little body, I'm like, that doesn't look good, Tim. What are you doing, man?
This movie literally looked like Tim Burton had diarrhea on a film reel. It was just awful. I love Red Letter Media so much, and I'm like obsessed with watching them. But Jay Bauman said it best. This is the ugliest movie ever made. It's an
eyesore.
It is. And where it should be, it's like, oh, look at these visuals, and look at this now, and look at this, and no, everything looks like shit, and it almost makes you nauseous because it is so jumpy back and forth, and everything looks so gross. You almost feel. I felt sick to my stomach watching this movie. And talk about performances. Johnny Depp just went. I get that he's the Mad Hatter, but like. You see Mad Hatter from the old Disney movie, and then you see this, and it's just awful. It looks like someone antiqued him with just like garbage. Like the makeup was terrible. Everyone looks like they're from Mardi Gras. Nothing makes sense at all. I don't know. I can't fucking stand this movie so much. I think this is the worst movie he ever made.
I've gone to my fair share of movies slightly or maybe slightly more slightly intoxicated than most people, but this movie's a fucking buzzkill.
We're all mad now.
I know. I wish it did. And like I said before we rolled, there's nothing to me more disappointing than seeing bad art come out of very, very talented people. Yes. There's plenty of examples, but this is definitely in the bottom of my list for Burton. What's after this? Dark Shadows. Oh, shit.
God damn. We can't get off this train.
We're not going to get off this train. This movie sucked. Oh, man. I watched it once and never went back. And it was when it first hit DVD or something. Because the show was awesomely bad.
I agree.
It's just it's such campy trash.
Yes.
The show is just this colorless kind of bad acting, kind of cavalcade of just horrible script writing, bad acting, and for some reason Tim Burton asked us to take it seriously. Even in the slightest way. I'm like, no, don't even take me. I can't take it seriously in the slightest way. And now you guys are like having bad days, and no, F this. I watched it once and never went back.
I just watched this for the first time yesterday.
Oh shit.
Yeah, and I was just like, oh my god, like this is a mess. Who is this movie for? Is it a comedy? Is it dark and gritty? But I mean, in one scene we have Barnabas, Johnny Depp's character sitting down with a bunch of hippies, and then he kind of kills them all because he's a vampire. And then the next scene, Helena Bonham Carter is giving him a blowjob in the chair, in a doctor's chair. It's just like, I don't get anything about this movie. I thought Chloe Moretz, whatever, was the worst fucking performance I've ever seen on film. Yep. She was just awful. And, it had Johnny Lee Miller in. I love him. And he sucked. Everybody sucked in this movie. The best thing about it was Eva Green's cleavage. And I'm sorry, but she's perfect. She's a very nice looking woman. And besides that, this movie was utter trash.
You have to respect your audience enough to forget them, but not forget that they're there entirely. That you're right. Who is this for? This isn't for people who paid $8.50 to get into a movie. This is for someone who wants to see a Dark Shadows movie. No one wanted to see a Dark Shadows movie. No one.
And it looks like not even Tim Burton wanted to see it, because it was just, the editing was poor. Everything was just jumbled together, and it looked like this looked like a George Lucas prequel, where it was just like, hey, they probably won't like this, but let's just put it in there because I don't care. I'm just cashing a paycheck. And it's every performance stunk. I said, what was before this, Alice in Wonderland was the worst Burton film. This really tries to take that title, but it's so bad. Let's move on. Look like trash.
Did he direct Frankenweenie? Because that's what's next.
Yes, he did.
Okay. I don't remember that one very much. So.
Me neither. Okay. It was good.
Yeah.
C+.
It reminded me of like those old school claymation things, and then by the time I got to the end of it, I was like, I have seen this done so much better in so many other venues. So yeah, that's how memorable Frankenweenie was. Okay, ladies and germs. Big Eyes is next.
Okay, so you didn't watch this film in its entirety, right?
I did not. I saw the first half, didn't care for it, and just changed the channel. It was just on TV or something, on HBO or Showtime, and I don't know. I like the character. Is it Amy Adams? I keep confusing. Okay, it is not Naomi Watts. It's Amy Adams.
Same.
I think I saw this when I was in the middle of my Amy Adams fatigue, where she was just in everything.
Sure.
When did this come out? Like 2012 or something? It's not that old. It's come out within the last few years. Maybe I should just look on the Wikipedia page that I'm looking at here.
I think it's about 3 years old.
Yeah, it says like 2012, 2013 here. But I had just seen her in the movie Her with Joaquin Phoenix, and then I saw this. I was like, no, this is not her best work. This is not anybody's best work, and I shut it off. So that's all I had.
The fact that people said that this was Oscar worthy from Her, I don't get that whatsoever. I did like how this seemed like a film, and I just watched this one yesterday too, for the very first time, where Tim Burton's just like, okay, I'm going to take a break from all this crazy, visual vomit, and I'm just going to make kind of a more restrained movie. And I actually liked it. I didn't love it. I thought Amy Adams did fine. Christoph Waltz was great. And he actually got a little bit of heat for being so over the top. But I mean, this is about one of the greatest, or most infamous plagiarists of all time. And I thought he did great. Christoph Waltz is he does such a good job at being manic. And, he's just like, he's over the top and everything, but that's what he is. He is every disgusting commission-based salesman that you've ever met. He's every car salesman you ever met. And he was great. I thought he just elevated this movie. And Burton did sneak in a little things here and there, little Burtonisms, where sometimes you like look at herself and the eyes would grow big, and it was with how kind of quaint this movie was and how kind of un-Burton-esque it was. It did kind of take me out of it when he did kind of insert himself a little bit too much. The ending, and I won't spoil it for you if you ever do watch this, or but it just kind of deconstructs into kind of a 90s kind of feel good ending, where it was almost like like a liar liar kind of ending, where it was just, I don't know, you had this ridiculous situation that happens in court that would never happen in real life, and this is based on real life, where a couple different weird tonal shifts that didn't make any sense, but for the most part I thought the performances were nice. I thought this was his best movie since Big Fish, for sure. And it was nice to see that he can still make a movie that's not just a Tim Burton explosion.
Yeah, one thing I did like is, like you said, it wasn't just this big eyegasm of CGI nonsense. He did actually shoot people, and it was nice to see him draw that back a little bit. And I think I saw maybe 2/3 of the movie. I kind of tuned out right when like the bombshell dropped, or whatever the big twist was. But maybe I'll go and check it out. Next on the list is Alice Through the Looking Glass. Do we just want to say the same shit we said for Alice in Wonderland? That
he didn't even direct it. He didn't even direct it, but it was even worse than that. It's like sitting on Star Tours all day at Disneyland. It just made me ill, and I hated it, and I turned it off.
Did he direct Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children?
He did, but I didn't see it.
Okay, it's one of those movies that like my family rented one time and I fell asleep during. So
I heard it was like X-Men Light, kind of.
Yeah, that's kind of what it reminded me of too. Just like junior class X-Men type stuff where, what's her name? Ava Green, is that who's in it? Yeah. She does a good job. She's fine, all right actress. I really don't remember that much of it to give it a full critique. I think we're seeing a theme here of the 2010s not being Burton's best decade. Apparently, he had something to do with Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter as well. He might have been a producer. He was I guess his next picture is Dumbo. He's doing the live action Dumbo remake. Okay, we're gonna keep remaking classic, practically flawless, even though they are some kind of racist movies.
Right.
Definitely with Dumbo. Yeah, exactly. Oh, their crow's named Jim. Oh, okay, we'll just tackle that.
Yeah. Oh boy, that's gonna be an interesting one, and one that I don't really feel like I need to see. We could say that for almost all these remakes nowadays, and there's no new ideas really. But Dumbo is definitely not a live action experience I need to relive again. I got to go sit in a theater and cry for another hour, like every time I watch it
at home.
Yeah, exactly. I don't need friends to do that. But yeah, that's. Man, like you said, you could definitely see where that went. He just had this nice steep incline, like a sweet roller coaster, and then just plopped.
I don't know if he's a prolific or as prolific as other directors, because he does take a couple years off here and there. But maybe just doing producing for a while would re-cleanse his palate, and he can bring us something really weird and beautiful, and maybe another movie for the ages, because he's not even 60 yet. So he's got many years to be able to really be the master we all know he can be, because he is one of the most talented guys in the business. And you can't recreate, you can't rip him off and succeed at that. I've seen Tim Burton rip off movies before, and it's just like, dude, what are you doing? You're Tim Burtoning the shit out of this. You sir or ma'am are no Tim Burton.
No.
I would love to see him grab a Neil Gaiman book and bring that to life. There's a Tale of Odd and the Frost Giants in Neil Gaiman book, which would be perfect. He could make it kind of like Coraline. But that's just my idea, sitting in my kitchen/office.
Do you put him on the Mount Rushmore of directors, basically, or does he just miss that kind of upper echelon?
Oh, if you're asking my 40-year-old self now, no. My 15, 16-year-old self would have been like, what the fuck are you talking about? He's the best in the world. Right. every director makes bad movies. Most of the time, it's more than one. I just hope that when he finds his stride again and starts making these quality pictures that are original, because if you look at Beetlejuice, Pee-wee's Big Adventure, they're very original movies. Edward Scissorhands, there was nothing like it. Even though Ed Wood's a biography, it's unlike any other biography that I've seen before or since. So I know he's got it in him to do truly original stuff and get out from Disney's foot there, that he just can't seem to stop making beloved classics into shitburgers.
I mean, but that's the thing that makes me hopeful for him to keep producing great film, and that's because of, even movies that weren't great, weren't great films, but when he did something like a Big Eyes, where it's just like, okay, he's still a competent director, and he still has the love for making films and making content like this, where he's not just a studio director, where it really seems like he is a lot of the time, but he can go away from that sometimes and just make a film like Big Eyes, or just make a film like Big Fish. Apparently it just has to have the name Big in it, for him to want to, not do just horrible schlock. But it is something that is, I don't know how many times I'm going to say it is, I'm optimistic for Tim Burton in the future. He can pull some stuff out, and maybe the stop motion stuff is kind of past. He doesn't have to just keep hitting the same well over and over again. But the world is, I mean, he changed the world of cinema, basically. That style, like you said, often replicate, or what term, often, tried but never replicated perfectly. But he changed the film, or the film industry. I would put him up in that upper echelon, just because of how he kind of inserted himself and his style into Hollywood.
I would take,
so to speak.
if I'll say this, I will take Tim Burton on his worst day before I'll take Brett Ratner on his best, or Michael Bay on his best. So
yeah,
if we want, I'll use the term very softly, the term sellout. I don't fully mean it,
yeah.
but I would love to see him get out from Disney's boot and do his own stuff again.
Absolutely. So that is the entire filmography. That was a huge undertaking, but so much fun going down memory lane, talking about the polarizing figure that is Tim Burton. I want to thank my co-host on this one, Mr. Jay Manning from Classic Flix. Where can everyone find you, and what are you up to?
At least for the next few weeks, I'll be kind of on hiatus for my channel, but it's still there on YouTube and Twitter. Just look up Classic Flix on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter. Probably going to release on my Twitter page some written reviews between now and summer. I take June, July off because I go do my summer job, but that's where I will be for the time being. And I have a video that I've written, which will premiere on someone else's channel later this month, and I look forward to sharing that with everybody.
Perfect. Awesome. And you could find me on Twitter at OrzovDunn. You could find me on Facebook and Instagram at Jon Dunning. For Jay Manning, I'm John. We will see you guys next time for another Director's Cut.